Okay, hi there, folks. This is Ray Lutz again with Citizens Oversight, and this is a second part of our review of AuditEngine, and this part is going to be a review of the 3 counties in Florida that this voting system was applied to. Now, if you haven't seen part 1, you want to go back and watch part 1 so you know what the some of the terminology is, and you'll understand how well or the theory of operation of how AuditEngine works, the steps involved. It's not complex. This is the concept here is not relying upon statistics or any kind of sampling methodology that includes an error rate. We don't have any included error rate in our methodology. We look at all of the ballot images. We look at all of the cast vote records, and we compare them down to the ballot. So it's not a sample where you're not sure if you've sampled correctly. This is an exhaustive retabulation of every single ballot image that was created by the original voting system. All right, so now the counties that we're involved here in this, here's a high-level overview of the different counties. Collier County is on the west coast at the tip. It includes Naples, and there is about 385,000 people in 2019. And you can see that it is a red district. The population turnout, this guess it's not shown here, was about in the 56%, I think. So there's eligible voters and there's turnout. But if you take the turnout here and you compare that with the total population, you can see it's a bit over half. And that's kind of what we see is kind of a nice way to do it, so you don't have to worry about two things, eligible voters and turnout, and wonder if the registration rolls, like the turnout is based on how many people still are registered. You're not sure if there's a bunch of dead wood on there. How many people are there is something that we kind of a hard number, and in the 50s, like 55 or so is a really consistent number of how many people vote. Okay, and so down here, let's just say that in Collier we had 2 sheets. All voters received 2 sheets. There was 2 sheets, and everybody got this 2 sheets to vote on. And that second sheet was the same for everybody. In Volusia County, only some voters had 2 sheets, and they were far different. So some in Collier County, the first sheet had a front and a back, and the second sheet was only the front. And in Volusia County, the first sheet was a front and back, and sometimes that second sheet was just the front, sometimes it was a front and a back. So just looking at the size of the files, it's harder to determine which ones were sheet 1 and sheet 2. So there was a little bit different there. And then in St. Lucie was even simpler with only 1 sheet for 1 voter, per voter. Every voter got 1 sheet, that's what I should say. Because we had 2 sheets in Collier, even though this was not the largest county, look how many ballot sheets we had, 417,000, a lot of sheets. Now, as we go down to the details, I will say that Collier County had really, really good had a very good, cleanest and complete set of ballot images, and the CBR files were basically perfect. And we didn't have to do any kind of re-requesting or fix-up or anything else. So we want to congratulate Collier County for a job very well done. So there's a big gold star for Collier County from Citizens Oversight. Thank you. Now they use ES&S equipment, and because of that, and actually it's true of Dominion as well. I should not say that so hardcore here. But we can frequently determine the sheet number, first, second sheet, and whether the image is a BMD just by reviewing the file sizes. It isn't always true, but in this case, it was very, very true and a very good tool, because we didn't have to actually look at the image file or in any way to know or refer to anything else to know whether it was sheet 1, sheet 2, just by the size of it. And you can see here the average size of sheet 1. That's because it's got 2 sides. Sheet 2 a lot smaller just because it's got only a side 1. And the BMD way smaller yet because it's an even smaller file. And so you can really see the difference here. The BMDs are much smaller in physical size as well. So it isn't just the fact that they have one side. So that is a way that we can determine where, like, how many ballots were cast. It would be basically the sheet 1 plus the BMDs. So we have sheet 1, this count, that's the size over there. This is the count. We know that pretty much everybody's going to vote sheet 1. That's got the presidential contest on it. A lot of people don't vote sheet 2 because it just has inconsequential contests or ones that they're not interested in. And so, but then the BMDs have both sheets into one. So those have, if there is a 2-sheet ballot, they put them all onto one sheet, and that's in the BMD. So those 78 images there seemed like those were the number of BMDs. Turns out that's not right, but I'll tell you that in a second. But we first started with saying 209,313. What is that? That's the number of sheet 1s. And we add 78 and we get this number, which is 39 ballots more than the published total of ballots cast. So we had 39 images too many. And we looked into this, and the way I actually came to this was it just came to me in the middle of the night that 39 is half of 78. You probably already thought of that as I was saying it, right? 39 is half of 78. And that means that this 78 here, what turns out, are duplicated. So again, when you have the 2 sheets, you have a sheet 1 and a sheet 2. Those are treated separately. They have separate line items in the cast vote record file. And those are like one ballot, but they're split up. So when they handle the BMD ballots, they're all in one. They didn't want it to look differently. So they wanted to still split that up with the contest that normally would be on the front of a hand-marked paper ballot would be the first record. And then they would have another record with the rest of the contest that would be, say, on the second sheet. And they would have 2 records. They would look like all the other records. But they would have to duplicate the ballot image and have a different number. And that's what they did. When we figured that out, then we realized that there was only 39 ballot images. We add the total of sheet 1s to that, and we get exactly the number of published ballots cast. So good work, Collier County. Everything came out clean with regard to the number of ballots. So this is step 1, is just to do this inventory and figure out how many ballots we have. We also check for duplicate images. Now, except for those BMDs, we didn't detect any, but we look for duplicated numbers and also hash values of the files. But we noticed that those ballot images that were BMDs that were duplicated, because all 39 were, did not have the same hash codes of the whole file. You had to actually go in and look at the images inside that hash file to get to hash codes that would compare. So for people that's too much detail for most people, but if you understand hash codes, that might be an important thing to think about. So then we get this chart here, which shows us essentially a chart here of the prevalence of different sizes in this bar chart. and so we can see that this sheet 1 has a fairly wider distribution of sizes up in this larger area. Sheet 2, which everybody got as well, has a much smaller, and then the BMDs are so few that you can't even see the little mark there. So this is the prevalence of the sizes. And then we drew a file size threshold. You can see you can draw this anywhere you want in this region. You'll still work out. So we kind of manually put these in. Anything above this is a sheet 1. Anything below it is going to be sheet 2, because remember sheet 2 only has half. And then this is the BMDs. So we can categorize it just by the file size, and that's what we do first. The reason we want to do it this way is because we don't want it to introduce any other, data that we might rely upon to figure this out if we can. And then for Collier, we ran this all the way through to the end. We had 324 sheets that had some disagreements on them, and 528 contests. It turns out that some of them were due to stretching. We had 4 that definitely failed due to really bad stretching, but some others that were in here these that were stretched. That is this is the high level discrepancy report. Notice that we have 0.078%. That's less than 0.1%. So it's less than 1 out of 1,000 sheets had at least 1 disagreement on them. And again, of those disagreements, we tend to be right more than the voting system. And when we're at this point here, I'm going to skip down, and because I think this is very instructive. This particular county had really clean files, no problem with that at all. Some stretching about some corrupted images, not too many, but we still have this number of disagreements. Now, if any of your contests are within this number, this is all the disagreements amongst all the contests on the ballot. But still, if your closest contest is, say, 5,000 apart, and you only have 324 or 528 contests that disagree, and you have these 4 failed, there's no way that you can get, even if you correct these, all in favor of what you think might happen, to try to flip it. It's not going to flip. All right. So if you don't have these within that range, it can't be flipped. And so you can stop right there. If you want, you can go in and try to resolve each one of these disagreements and go through an adjudication phase and have fun doing that. But why do it if you know that it's not going to be done? We will jump down right now, though, while we're on Collier County, because I think it makes better for the flow of this, and look at the actual disagreements in Collier County. Now, the disagreement file, actually I want to put that down there because the disagreement file for Collier County is right here, the full discrepancy report. And so we have this appendix down here which goes into detail, but I also want to put in this full discrepancy report right here. Okay, so we have that up here already, the discrepancy report for Collier County. And let's look at what that discrepancy report looks like. This is one of the key products from AuditEngine is to look at each one of the discrepancies, and you can modify this to address how many you want in the report, etc. I think right now it includes all of the 324 disagreements in the report. As we look here, it's a pretty long report. So what we did was, if we have every contest on the sheet match between the audit engine and the voting system, we just have one record in the comparison result, and those are the agreed records. Now, the agreed records may also be blank. The reason this seems really high, number of blanks, is because of that second sheet. A lot of people did not fill in that second sheet, and that second sheet is where all these blanks occur. Almost nobody goes in and votes and does not complete the first sheet. I mean, why are they there? So they complete the first sheet, but that second sheet is in contests that are maybe something like constitutional amendments that people are not necessarily interested in. They go, I don't know how to answer those, and so they leave it blank. Overvotes are usually end up being reviewed by the voting system, and those are pulled out from the agreed. But there are also a number, if they're disagreed, this is a number of disagreed, and sometimes there's undervotes that are very frequently that are disagreed, because they don't always review any of the undervotes. If it's a election like this one, which had a wide margin, then they're not going to do any adjudications, and they don't look at the overvotes to find out what they were, and they don't ever find any of those undervotes really. What we have here is by precinct. So you take a given precinct, and there's 8,813 ballots that completely agreed sheets. Okay, and so that'll include a first sheet and a second sheet. As you see, 155 blank, that's going to be that second sheet. There was only 3 disagreements, so out of that we have a 0.03 disagreement rate. Let's look at what's there. And the first ballot here is this ballot ID, and we can go and look at that if we want. 102382. So for example, if somebody wants to actually look at in Collier County, we go over to Collier County. Up one more. In this election. And we would need to know which archive it's in. I guess it's 2020 ballot images, so it's in this first archive that doesn't have any extension on it. And I'm opening that here, and I'm going to look for it. I forgot already. 102382. Okay, so we sort on the name, and then you got to go down on this thing because it doesn't have a search. 102.382. I believe that's it. And okay, and in this one here, the issue is Constitutional Amendment 1. Here is the thing that we're talking about. So I just pulled up, this is the original ballot out of the archive. We just looked at it. Now we're seeing here in the report this same ballot brought up here. You can see exactly. And the issue is that the person normally fills in the bubble solid. So that's important to know. We review all of the bubbles that the voter voted on their sheet, on their ballot, per sheet. And we notice how they fill this out, and we compare that with how this is filled out here. And you can see that they never vote like that. They always vote at least that big, and this one they made even bigger. So we evaluate this for voter intent to say this was a no. And you can see that here is that we said there was a vote. They said no vote. They said there was an overvote. And we said it was a vote for no. and they said it did not vote at all. Marginal. Which is legitimate to say. I mean, at least they're calling it out as marginal, so they might pull that into review. We think this is a sure thing. There's no need to have somebody review this. So now we're going back to the, let's go to the next one just so you can see and I have the second page here so you can look at everything. This next one is for Supreme Justice Munoz. And he, in this one, we say there was a vote. They say no vote, and it was an undervote. Nobody voted. There was no vote there at all. And as we look at it, we see the person missed the bubble slightly. Now, got a little bit in there, but clearly made a big mark here next to the no. So we say that should be no. All right, now I'm going to go over to the case study report and see this thing here, and you can see we have the first two, and so I'm pulling in just that one part unless we want to look at it. In the first one, the audit was correct. This next one, the audit was correct. Audit system, AuditEngine. This next one here, they had a slight hesitation mark on that no. They said it was an overvote. We said it was a yes, which is correct. This one, we say yes, which is correct. All right, this one here, we didn't get right because of this big stretch. Okay, so we would want to reevaluate this whole ballot and make sure that we got that right because of the stretch. We may be adding in, there's a unstretching or a way to deal with this stretch business here, but still we're going to be marking these for review because the fact is it's kind of hard to deal with the disruption of the ballot. So far we haven't seen the voting system get these wrong. So they are dealing with the stretching okay, and that's pretty admirable that they're able to deal with the stretching. So we give them credit for that, but we don't give them that much credit for the rest of these. So here is where the person obviously wanted to vote no. They said it was an overvote. We got it right. Here's one that's sort of definitely marginal. It's very hard to know here, but we believe it should have been yes because it's mostly in yes. So we got that right. They said no vote at all. And this would not be brought up for any kind of adjudication by their system because undervotes are not brought up. Here, the person has a tiny little mark on there, and if you review the whole ballot, they have solid marks in every single one. So that is not how they do it. Some voters do that. They just put a little tiny mark in there, and then you would want to say, you know, that's a vote. But in this case, it isn't because other marks by this voter were solid. And then the same token, we go through here with where we get all these correct. This was one where we had this massively stretched ballot, and we don't rely upon what happened there. So that would be want to review. Here is where, well, nothing really happened here because they said it was an overvote because they saw 2 here, but it's a write-in with no name. So even though this was a vote, basically it has no name, so it goes back to, should be an undervote, not an overvote. But it doesn't really matter because both of them mean you're not going to count that. Then here we have again a stretched top. These are kind of interesting. This voter makes X's that mostly, or very infrequently, does he hit the bubble. And so actually this person here is somebody who consistently can't make it into the bubble and misses it completely, but obviously wants to vote for this person, just can't put it in there. Here's where they just barely made it in there and made this kind of weird mark here. That we got right. Now here's one where the copy watermark on the ballot images were actually led us astray, and we said this was a vote when it wasn't, and so we got this one wrong, but we did say that it was marginal. So we did get it wrong, but it would be put in the marginal set, and therefore it would be, if we got down to looking at every single ballot, it was super close, and we definitely would pull this one up. Stretch top, that would be, you know, pulled up for further review if everything was close. Again here, this one we got right, yes. Here is another stretched, another right. We got this right, we got this wrong because of this corner problem. And I believe this is, normally we're immune to this problem. So I'm not sure why. We'd have to investigate this further to see why we're not immune to this problem in this case. It'd be kind of interesting to review that. But as a result, it was not aligned correctly, and therefore we didn't get this right. This is right. And now these, the person circles them. We did get these when the voting system did not. And these would be brought up, if it got close, the whole ballot would be brought up for adjudication, and the reviewer would be able to review the entire ballot and check all the other races, because you know this voter, it may make really big circles and then nobody would get it. But here's one that's probably infuriating to some people, where Donald Trump, you know, the person voted for them, but they didn't realize that they had to fill in the bubble. Some people would say, well, you know, if you can't read the directions, you shouldn't get the vote. In some states, that's the way it is. But you have to admit that even if you have a state that says, oh, it's not voter intent, we're just going to go by what the voter did, sometimes you have some that are close, like this one. How do you do this? If it's a clear thing, then you can't say that this is yes versus no when the person accidentally put a mark in there. I think that I kind of like the voter intent states. Michigan is not voter intent, and some people are very adamant that they love that. But I think we can do a very good job of interpreting voter intent if we have good machines. Here's one that's very difficult to know by the machine. Is that yes or no? I think it's clearly the person tried to get it in yes. I don't know why they have to do so many loops here. But there you go. So we went through all those, and that gives you just the sampling and a flavor for it. I didn't want to go through all 300 or something of them. We just went through 36. And of those, 7 ballots were stretched. Now, these are the ones that we already disagree on. And so we're going to throw out all the stretched ones and say we're going to definitely review those. If they're not stretched, and we look at how many of those contests were correct, and we got 28. The only one that we got wrong was that copy that was put on the ballot that said copy. And if it was not alignment or corrupted in some fashion. So just the act of interpreting what the voter says, we do a better job by 97% according to this. And I did not try to analyze that based on significance or anything, but it seemed very significant to me that if you get all but 1 out of 36 samples, but I would want to go through all of these 500 or 328 and see how well we did. So that gives you a good idea of one county that did very well with its files. We didn't find any big issue, but we still found a lot of small issues that might be, you know, if it was a close contest, we would want to investigate all these. And we could do that. We do a better job of interpreting voter intent than the voting system. Now, I'm going to end here with part 2, and I'm going to go on to part 3 and review both Volusia and St. Lucie. Volusia is very, very interesting, so you don't want to miss that. because we did find some issues there, some misreporting and so forth that are very, are concerns. It did not change the outcome of the election, but it makes you wonder, how did they possibly get this right if all the files are this wrong? So anyway, that'll be in the next section. So thank you for viewing this one, and tune in to part 3.